obviously you're not a golfer.
I must have drank me about 15 Dr. Peppers.
Congratulations. How do you feel?
I gotta pay.
We have heard the chimes at midnight, Master Robert.
You're an inanimate fucking object! You told I'm coming! And hell's coming with me, you hear? Who the fuck has the goddamn gall to call his house on a Tuesday night? God!
What the fuck is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of 3 for 3. This is our Thanksgiving episode.
Gobble,
Coming
gobble, 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 gobble.
That's right. Happy week before Thanksgiving, everybody. I am your host for this week, Mr. Jackson Workman, and I am giving thanks for my two wonderful chums who have joined me yet again, Mr. Matthew Patterson and Mr. Samuel Holler. How are you chaps doing today?
Fantastic.
Alrighty, Roo. This is going to be the fastest turnaround for an episode that we've ever done. We are recording this, and then I got to edit it tonight and upload it tomorrow. So you guys are seeing this just a day after we record it. Just a little behind the scenes there for everybody. But let's just go ahead and, what'd you say?
History in the making.
That's right. So let's just go ahead and get into it. We picked three Thanksgiving adjacent movies. I wouldn't say all three of them are Thanksgiving movies necessarily, but at least part of them take place on or around the holiday. And I think we will go ahead and start with Mr. Holler's pick since it is the most Thanksgiving-y of the three. And that would be the 2003 film Pieces of April. Take it away, my good sir.
Yeah, directed by Peter Hedges, which we are within the whatever 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon from because our friend Andrew was an extra in one of his movies, The Odd Life of Timothy Green.
I didn't know that.
Yep.
Wow.
He was one of his classmates.
That's
And so this stars Katie Holmes and a slew of other really good actors from Patricia Clarkson to Oliver Platt, Allison Pill, Sean Hayes. I cannot remember the guy that plays Bobby, but I know him from something.
Derek Luke.
Thank you. But Katie Holmes, or April, is basically the black sheep of the family. She's not really kind of like loved in any way, shape, or form. I feel like Oliver Platt, as the dad, tries to get people to like her, but also he has his own gripes and issues about their relationship. And so basically, she decides to put on Thanksgiving dinner, but she lives in New York. They live in Pennsylvania, I believe. And it just goes wrong. Like from the get-go, her oven's not working. She starts trying to get help from the other people within the apartment. You see a dude from Secret Life of Walter Mitty that had all the cats that also had a mean mother. I can't remember that actor, but he's always great. I could get canceled for this. I like to call him Samoan Joe. But anyway,
Which character was he?
the dude that had all the cats that like said his mother was so mean and smoked cigarettes all day, but he would give anything to have
Oh,
one.
that dude, yeah. He's one of those guys who just shows up in a lot of different things in small parts, but I can't remember his name either.
I don't think I've seen him in anything this early as well. He's always been like a 2010 post actor for me.
Right.
But so she is it Isaiah Whittington? Is that his name?
Isaiah Whitlock Jr.
Whitlock Jr. Okay. So yeah, it's basically her trying to get the day ready and cook the food and everything, and her boyfriend's trying to go get clothes to like look well and impress her family while the family is driving up, and it's different kind of exposition stories like that are told via the car ride, and their little like glimpses into what this life is for that family and the problems that went wrong. And Patricia Clarkson has cancer, and so she's feeling rough. She smokes a joint, which was sick. I think that's what got her the Oscar nomination. And yeah, I just finished it right before we started recording. I really enjoyed it. Very weird, very jarring going from Scent of a Woman to this because it's like pristine film quality, while this is very much like a digital camera that's very personal feeling, I think, at times because it's so kind of like rough looking in some aspects. But yeah, what did y'all think of it?
Yeah, I mostly enjoyed it. It definitely took me off guard, how low budget it was. I did not know until it started that it was basically going to look like a home movie. I
Yeah.
was like, when it started, I thought it was like part of the movie. I thought like there was someone, like one of the characters was filming her with like a home video camera or something. So then when it like cut to like the second scene, like the first scene with Oliver Platt, it still looked that way. I was like, oh, this is what the whole movie's going to look like. I'm very impressed that they were able to get such a massive A-list cast on. I read the budget was only $300,000. So I'm just and like I think two-thirds of that went to the actors' salaries. So I'm like, wow, I can't believe they were able to get that many people for that small of a budget. They must have all really believed in the project. But I liked it, like you said, Sam. It did make it feel kind of more grounded and intimate in that way. And I mostly enjoyed it. I thought the story was very relatable. I thought you really grew to. I personally was very attached to April's journey. Like I was very invested in her, making the dinner and making sure everything went well and making sure that, just every time she had to hop to another apartment or like something went wrong and she had to go find somebody else's oven, I was genuinely just like, really invested in making sure nothing went wrong. Like when Sean Hayes was like trying to lock her out of the apartment and shit, I was genuinely just like, you piece of shit, you weirdo piece of shit, like let her the fuck in. Like, what is he was weird as fuck in this movie.
Come on, Bernadette, let's go. And then walks his little.
Yeah, shout out to Bernadette the cat, the real star of the movie. But yeah, I mean, like the genuine like tension that one simple plot point created of her oven not working and her having to go find like hop from apartment to apartment, I thought that was well done. Um, the one thing I didn't love was some of the writing was kind of not great, I thought. But what made up for it was because this movie to me kind of falls into the category of those 2000s movies like Garden State where it's like these kind of indie family dramas where you know the writing is kind of childish and like kind of sounds like it was written by a 5-year-old, but I'm not saying like that was necessarily the case here. It's like but it almost fell into that trap, like, but what saved it was the fact that this movie took a more minimalist approach where there's not always a ton of dialogue and they're not always like overwriting it a bunch. Like a movie like Garden State is just like insufferable. You want to take a fucking power drill to your head watching that movie because the dialogue, because those kinds of movies usually they ramble on and on and on with these giant pretentious monologues about nothing. And they kind of dip their toes into that in this movie, but the conversations, like mostly the car scenes, like, a lot of that was just it kind of dipped its toes into that territory. And
I
I'm
did
just kind of
find
like,
the scene where she was looking through her son, who I can't remember his name now, but was in 10 Cloverfield Lane.
yeah, John Gallagher Jr.
Oh, yeah, showing his photography to her mother and like the photos of her breast removal and everything, and like her mother's reaction. I really enjoyed that kind of
Yeah, but see, again,
did
I
with that.
liked because Peter Hedges also is someone who I've seen parts of The Odd Life of Timothy Green. And again, that's another movie where the dialogue is just unbearable to listen to because it's just these really long-winded, just pretentious, the dialogue sounds like it was written by a child. But even then, that movie, in spite of how badly written it is, it has its heart in the right place. Like you see what it's trying to say. It's just the execution isn't great. But here again, because he's not too self-indulgent with the writing, and he's not like overwriting it and overwriting it, he's keeping it simple and minimal. You get the emotional impact from what they're trying to do without having to suffer through the long-windedness of it. And I think that's why it works. Because again, you've got like that scene where Derek Luke goes to buy the suit,
Yeah.
like that scene. I like what they're going for in that scene. The dialogue isn't very good because he's just like just the long-windedness about like the love and all that. I'm just like, okay, that sounds kind of stupid. But they keep it brief. That's the point I'm trying to make, is they keep it brief and simple enough to where it never becomes overbearing. Again,
Yeah.
like something like Garden State, where the whole thing just sounds like a fucking pretentious teenager wrote it. Like, and so a lot of the plot points throughout the movie, the emotional impact isn't completely like dulled, you know, like you still feel, and just spending time with the characters. And I will say also, I was much more invested in the April stuff than the car stuff, because ultimately, for one thing, I thought Patricia Clarkson's character, for the most part, was a little too unlikable. Like, you know, her telling Alison Pill to shut up when she's singing, I wanted to smack her in the face. To be completely honest, I was like, okay, you're kind of a bitch, but you know, and just a lot of others, like her just getting out of the car and trying to hitchhike back, I thought was over dramatic. I'm just like, really, this character's, and the cancer thing had nothing to do. If you took the cancer plot out of the movie, it wouldn't make a difference at all. Like that, it was completely unnecessary. Like if you just made it about like she and April have a strained relationship and they're trying to make it up, it would literally just be the exact same. The cancer thing was totally unnecessary. So there's that, and there are a couple things in the movie like that where it's like, okay, I don't really know what the point of that was. It didn't really make an impact on the story. But in spite of all that, I thought that just the very basic, I like the minimalist approach. I like the fact that it was like, it, for the most part, it kept it very simple, and just the story itself was very good. Like this, like you said, she's the black sheep of the family, and they give you kind of context for why, where you can kind of see why they, you know, don't trust her, just details that they give about the things she's done to them. But at the same time, you see throughout the course of the movie how much she's really making an effort to make amends with them, and how important it is to her, and how, you know, she is doing better. She's with a good dude. She seems to be in a better place. And, you know, so that's why, because you spent the whole movie um following her on this journey, and you know, seeing how much effort she's putting into making this dinner, and seeing all the lengths that she's going to try to make amends, and you know, seeing how she interacts with everyone else in the building. um when they get to that apartment, the family, and they just fucking leave, the sheer and absolute rage that was coursing through my body when she comes down those stairs and they're gone was unfucking matched. I was so unbelievably pissed off at the family. I mean, they didn't stay there for more than 10 fucking seconds. It was just, you feel genuinely so hurt and upset, because you have followed her on this journey. You have seen all this effort she's gone through. You have seen, you know, and you just see how unbelievably like shallow they are
Yeah, like
and
the whole time I saw
superficial.
her making jokes like she stops the car to breathe because of her cancer, but is then turns like I just didn't know how to talk to you about how are we gonna like pretend to like scrape away the food into the trash without her noticing. And
That's
it's
what I'm saying. I'm like, Patricia Clarkson's character, I thought, came off as way too unlikable for a lot of the movie. But and shit like that, you know, where like, you know, they're just seeing the apartment building, and then seeing Bobby come up, you know, they don't know the like Allison Pill just automatically being like, "Oh my God, lock the door. I was like, you fucking assholes, like just immediately leave, like without giving it a second thought. And I'm just like, you guys aren't even willing to go upstairs for Christ's sake. And that's why, I was when they got to that diner, I was like, so help me Jesus. If y'all don't go back to that apartment, I'm going to explode. So thank God they did it. And that was a nice moment where she goes to the bathroom and sees, the young girl and her mom, and she's not treating her very well. And she kind of has that realization of like, shit, I need to, this is kind of what I'm doing in a way, and I need to go and fix this. And I love the moment where the grandma looks out and sees them driving away on the motorcycle, and she has like that nice smile of just seeing them drive away. And I'm just like, and that whole last part where, they all come into the apartment and they're having dinner was just really heartwarming. I really thought like, again, like, and that's what I'm saying is like, I love the minimalist approach because, you know, Peter Hedges seems to know, like, okay, maybe the dialogue writing here isn't my strong suit, so I'm not going to lean too heavily into that. Moments like that where there's not as much dialogue being spoken, where it's just like, a really sweet, heartfelt, simple moment like that at the end where they're all just getting together and having the dinner. No words are required. Like it just tugs on your heartstrings in just the appropriate way. And all the best moments of the movie to me were the moments like that, where it was more minimal. It was more just following the characters, April in particular, on her journey. And, I really loved her interactions with the different apartment people, like the first couple that she goes to, like her interactions with them I thought were really sweet. And,
Kept
that was
getting
a really
mad
funny
about
scene.
the food.
Say what?
Kept getting so mad about the way she was cooking food.
I know, yeah, he was getting pissed,
Nobody
but
liked cranberry sauce from the can.
yeah, and I liked how that first scene where she first opens the door and she's like, "Oh, I can't wait to hear about your," it like laughs for like 10 seconds straight. And I was just like, "It's not that funny. Why are you laughing for so long?" And then the smash cut to her crying on the couch. I was like, that was really good. Like, "Oh, your poor mother. I can't believe it." I was like, that was actually a really well paced, like, the punchline hit so much harder because of how long the buildup was. But and then I liked again, like her going with the Asian family. That was really sweet how they ended up helping her fix the leg that Sean Hayes took off. That piece of shit. He fed the leg to the fucking cat. But yeah, it all just really, again, I didn't love some of the writing, but overall I thought it was a really sweet, heartfelt time. Very touching, very enjoyable. I loved again the spirit of it. The super low budget kind of indie feel was very charming. So
Did you like it, Matt?
Oh yeah, yeah. No, I really liked it. I mean, did on what Jackson said because that, yeah, very indie, like 2000, early 2000s feel. Um, yeah. I mean, the performances were really good. Sean Hayes was great, and I really liked the camera work for the being low budget. Yeah, it was good.
um yeah, it again was very just it was definitely a charming little thing. Happy I saw it. I think yeah, in spite of its flaws, it was very fun. And I miss Katie Holmes, that bastard Tom Cruise ruined her life. It's just like she's in, witness protection from Scientology now, pretty much. So you gotta rooting for a comeback for her for sure. She was really good, and the whole cast was really
Yeah.
great.
Like everyone did great, but I do feel like if she wasn't as likable of a character, the whole thing would have definitely fallen apart. She really brought everything to that role.
Yeah, and I also have to say that scene where they leave and she is like crying on the bed afterwards was just fucking heartbreaking. Like really just tugs at your emotions in the best possible way. Like, you know, It really, I also read, interestingly enough, there was a line that they cut out where apparently during that scene, she originally was supposed to say, I knew this was going to happen. And they cut it out because they didn't want to make it look like she was just thinking about herself. Um, and I think, that was a good choice because she's not, it would have been understandable if she did say that, but I think it does hit harder the fact that she's not just, saying something like that in the moment. She really is just more upset that she wasn't able to make amends.
Yeah.
I think it makes a stronger statement. So, because again, you're very upset for her in that moment. So, but yeah, good time. Um, well,
Surprisingly short. Well, I was confused why it was so short seeing the cast until I saw the like budget in a sense through the camera. So that's why I was like, oh, this is like starting off kind of like directing. It felt like, which was really nice.
yeah, it definitely was a lot more. I did not realize it was going to be so low budget. That took me off guard. But I liked it. Again, it was cool. It was like I just love that. Like seeing people pull something together on such a shoestring budget and really just make it work, like that's always just cool to see. Um, well, I guess we'll go ahead and move on to the next. Um, I guess you could say I'm doubtful of which one we should do next, but when in doubt, fuck. Um,
Ooh-ah!
Yeah.
Hooah! Son of a woman, baby. Yeah. So and fellas, there are only two syllables in this whole wide world worth remembering. Pussy. Or so Al Pacino has taught us. Yes, that's right. Scent of a woman.
I think that is the sense of woman right there.
So what?
That is the sense of woman.
Exactly. There you go.
Uh,
Um, but yeah, so Scent of a Woman, that's the next one. The classic 1992 film starring Al Pacino and Chris O'Donnell and directed by Martin Brest, um, who I hate hasn't directed a movie in over 20 years. But I understand why. So the plot of this one is Chris O'Donnell is a kid. I also hate how
my
his
road.
what's happened to his career. Although he had that NCIS show for a while, so that was something. Um, but Chris O'Donnell is a kid at a boarding school, a very snotty, the Baird School, which is a very snotty prep school in Boston.
They're bums, that's what they are.
Yeah, bad bums, a lot of them. And one night, he and Philip S. Hoffman, as he is billed in this movie, are walking back to their dorm, and they see these three snotty fucking kids setting up a prank to pull on the headmaster, who they don't like, and they publicly humiliate the headmaster, pull this prank on him, and the headmaster tells Chris O'Donnell's character, Charlie, he says, I know you know who did it. I know Philip Seymour Hoffman's bitch ass isn't going to tell me because he's also a snotty little punk just like them. But you, I know you'll tell me, especially if I tell you that you'll get into Harvard. I'll personally recommend you to the dean of Harvard if you tell me who did it. You take the Thanksgiving weekend to think about it, and you come back to me. Um, and then Charlie takes a job over the Thanksgiving break looking after a middle-aged blind man named Colonel Frank Slade, played by Mr. Pacino himself. Wow. But yeah, and he thinks it's just going to be a standard babysitting job, just looking after him and not really doing much. But Colonel Slade has other plans. He wants to go to New York. He wants to visit his brother. He wants to drink some wine. He wants to fuck a lady. And then he wants to blow his brains out in that order. So Charlie's got to make sure that that doesn't happen. And although they don't get along at first, they bond along the way. and they become an important part of each other's lives, and
In the
so on.
Ferrari.
So what?
Zip it in the Ferrari.
That's right. They're zipping around in a Ferrari. American Dad has ruined that scene for me forever. They did their own little parody version of it. But yeah, this is very much not my first time watching this. I've seen this movie 100 times. It's one of my like top five favorite movies of all time. So yeah, it I hadn't seen it in a few years though. I think the last time I saw it was the time I showed it to you, Sam, which would have been a
Is it
good while ago.
2018?
That's what I
Maybe.
want to say. Which I can't believe it's been that long, but um yeah, it so it was a lot of fun seeing it again, but since I've already seen it 100 times, I know you both probably had seen it already, but I'll turn it over to you anyway. How was it watching this one again?
You want to go,
Uh,
Matt?
yeah, it was great. This one I hadn't seen since like probably early high school, not even like later high school. So I was like my dad on TV. So it was kind of
Might have seen the version that he didn't want you to see.
yeah, this probably was yeah, because like I realized that it probably was edited for TV a little bit too, because I do not remember some of the crazy lines in the movie. Very well written, very well shot. And you really do care about the characters a lot. And I feel like it kind of goes like places like places where if you hadn't seen it in a bit, you don't really remember some things. Like I don't remember uh quite as much of the movie as I thought I did, which was nice. Basically the ending in the middle. Because I totally forgot about the whole blowing his brains out part. When he said that, I was like, oh fuck, I forgot about that. But it was, yeah, I mean, it's a great movie. Al Pacino's fucking amazing.
Some
Um, yeah.
something I really appreciate is like a lot of movies that where characters go to New York, it really makes a spectacle of the city. But and even though it's a big deal that they're going to New York, they live so close, like it's not that big of a deal to them in terms of like showing the flashy lights and everything. Like they're just living in this environment. It's not its own character, but it also is. And that's what I really liked about it and appreciated that they didn't try to shoehorn a bunch of like sweeping shots of the Times Square and all that kind of stuff. And it just felt like like with them, you were with them and they weren't the tourists looking around trying to see everything. Obviously, Al Pacino can't fucking look around and see shit, but um it just made like seems like we're there in the taxi cab like even better because like you still through the windows get that like New York vibe, but it's about what they're doing, not where they're at. So
Very good point. And yet I still think, like you said, Sam, they don't get too caught up in like the big gratuitous like sweeping shots of New York, but what they do is I noticed this time there are still a lot of shots where like shots of them just walking down the street where you do get good views of it in the background, like the
mhm.
buildings and shit. So they do frame it in a way to make sure like the city is still a character in a way where it's present, in some form, but it's not like you said gratuitous, like just getting shots of all the landmarks and that have nothing to do with anything. It's the city, it's organic to the scene that they're in, like the shots of the city that you see, and I think that's pretty cool. It's not the cinematography. I think the cinematography in this is really, really good. The Donald D. Thorin is who shot this and did a great job. And yeah, this one, honestly, I
The giving
mean,
a gun scene, I feel like is so well shot. The way like Chris O'Donnell's like back and like he's crying, but he's leaned so far back that his tears are like staying on his eyes. And when he finally gets up, that's when they
yeah,
down and everything. And
that scene is phenomenally well shot. I think you can just see every last bit of emotion on his face in that moment because it's so intimate the way that, and both of them,
yeah,
and it's framed where it captures all the feelings that are going on that are emanating from their faces. And even just tracking Chris O'Donnell from the door through over to the window as he's asking him to give him the gun, I think that's just very well, paced, like, are just been very well blocked. Just how he comes over and how he just inches closer and closer to him and shit. Like it adds to the tension of that scene and just
Think of the scene he first met him, where it follows him from the door around the edge, and then he finally comes around, and Al Pacino's just sitting there smoking and drinking, and then
Mhm.
he also gets closer and closer throughout the scene to him until he finally backs up.
Yeah, there's a rhythm to it. It's very well done. And I think I mean every aspect of this movie really is just phenomenally well done. I mean everybody involved is a pro. I think it's Matt, like you said, the script, I mean, just chef's kiss. Bo Goldman just passed away last year. Rip. He was an absolute god of screenwriting. And this is one of the best things he ever wrote, I think. So many, first of all, just structurally perfect, incredibly emotionally resonant, and just so many great lines. Whether it's like you've got like the big chunks of text, like Al Pacino's speech at the end is one of the all-time greatest movie speeches.
Ahora?
Yeah. If I were the man I was 5 years ago, I'd take a flamethrower to this place. One of my all-time favorite Pacino deliveries. But and such a great that's a great speech. The scene where he's about to kill himself and they're talking, that's incredibly well written. But not only just the big chunks of text like that, but just the little, I mean, so many amazing just one-liners from him throughout the movie, just little things that he says like that are just either hilarious or just, moving or whatever it is. I love the whole scene where the tango scene is for good reason one of the most famous scenes in the movie because it's amazing. And there are tons of great lines. I love when he's talking to Charlie and he's like, "Is she pretty?" Yeah, she's not bad. Oh boy, the boy's alive. Just- yeah, little moments like that I just absolutely love. And Pacino's delivery is perfect as usual, but
I really liked his ending when he comes back to the house and he's talking to the little girl,
Mhm.
and he's like, "It's time for us to make up," and she's just like, "No," and he's like, "Okay, well," he just keeps trying, and it's like, well,
Mhm.
now yeah, his whole perspective is
Right.
changed, and like
Yeah.
you said, it's just even though the stakes are not good for to a degree, it's such a heartwarming movie, even with like the fear of Christopher Donald getting expelled or Al Pacino killing himself or even killing Chris O'Donnell.
Yeah,
So
which
So
eh,
both
say
what
what?
and he's like, I'm gonna kill us, but I'm gonna kill you too.
yeah.
I was like, damn, okay.
I remember the first time I showed this to Sam, I remember he actually thought that he was going to shoot Chris O'Donnell. And I'm just like, yeah, it sure seemed like it for a second there, didn't it? But yeah, but that's the thing is like I love how yes, there are high stakes and yes, you're afraid for the characters and you think maybe it's not going to go well for them. But that's kind of the whole thing is they both have to learn in their own way, like even if this massive life altering thing happens, like there's still more to live for, you know? Like he's got to convince, Frank of that. Like, yes, you're blind. I know you're in pain, but there's still more to live for. And then he's got to kind of learn the lesson of like, okay, whether I get expelled or not, I want to keep my soul and my integrity intact and not sell out. And, I can live with myself at least knowing I did the right thing and thankfully he does end up not being expelled but yeah it's just they both have to learn their that lesson kind of to a degree
That's where I
so
feel like one of the saddest parts in the whole movie was the Thanksgiving dinner scene.
yeah
But it also makes you feel so good because Al Pacino stood up for Chuck. Yeah.
his
No,
name is
Charles. Charles. He doesn't go
oh,
by Chuck or Chucky.
Chucky. Bradley Whitford being a dick as usual
One of the
And
um
morals of the movie is funny as well as just don't be a snitch.
yeah
yeah.
don't be a snitch snitches get stitches That's
that
the
made me think,
message.
like, what the hell did he do in the military where he was so adamant about not being a snitch?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, damn,
That's a
he was
good
not
point.
gonna let you sell your life away. And
Was the Lyndon administration corrupt? We will find out. They've
Exactly.
secretly been funding the Hoover Dam through the Lyndon administration for 45 fucking years.
know who is behind it all now.
But yeah, I also just have to say um, that, well, for one thing, something I have to say, um, the fact that I'm just gonna just say right now, the fact that Thomas Newman has still not won an Academy Award is a fucking crime. Like, it's a fucking crime that that man has not won an Academy Award at this point. He is my favorite composer. I think one of the best of all time. I really think that
Sucks you right.
his yeah, immediately right off the bat, the score just sucks you right into this movie. This is one of his best. I don't even think he was nominated for this one, which is insane. Like this is one of his best scores, I've always thought. But it's such a key part of the movie. But yeah, I also just have to say, the performances were all obviously outstanding. Pacino is at the top of his fucking game in this one. I think he extremely deserved that Oscar. I know there's some debate to this day over who deserved it more, him or Denzel, but I haven't seen Malcolm X, but I don't give a shit.
The anniversary of that being released was like yesterday or something. That's quite crazy.
Well, that's how I celebrated that was by watching the guy who beat him.
Might get
Um,
canceled for that.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Come at me, Spike Lee. I'm not afraid. No, I'm sure Denzel is incredible in that movie, but Pacino really just is at the absolute top of his fucking game in this movie, is just incredible. And Chris O'Donnell, I think was robbed of a nomination for this. I think he is just so beautiful in this movie. His performance is just so beautiful and understated and human, and just that scene where he stops him from killing himself. I mean, genuinely some of the realest emotion. I mean, you see it all over his face. Those are the realest tears, I mean, you've ever seen. It's just like his performance in this movie is, I remember this was the first, way back when I watched this for the first time. This was the first movie of his, non-Batman movie of his, that I'd ever seen. And that was all I knew him for, was Robin. And I remember seeing his name in the credits of this and being like, Chris O'Donnell, like Robin is in this? What the fuck? And then I watched the movie and I'm like, oh my God, he's a really good actor. What the fuck? I didn't know that. And ever since, I've always been so
I'm in
upset.
the darkness, Charles. I'm in the darkness.
I'm in the dark. Um, yeah, he's beautiful in this. James Rebhorn as the dean is great. Shout out to him. It's been about 10 years, I think, since he passed. He was one of the all-time greatest character actors, just so great in everything he was ever in. And this was probably his best part, I would say. Plays such a hateable character. Um, and everybody. I mean, Philip Seymour Hoffman, this was kind of his first big movie. I read that literally before this, he was mostly just doing like these nothing productions and like TV commercials and shit. So like this was kind of the movie that changed his career, and you can see why, because even in the relatively small part that he has, he still shines and makes that character very, again, snotty and hateable. He's a rat.
A gif of him hiding his face behind the book and saying "fuck you."
Oh yeah. So many great little things he does. I love it. But to wrap up this one, yeah, just absolute banger of a movie. Still one of my all-time favorites. Never get tired of watching it. I mean, really just it's a damn near flawless movie, I would say. Just every aspect of it is incredibly well done, incredibly well directed, acted, written, shot, scored, edited. I mean, the whole thing is just, just awesome. Just truly.
Ooh-ha!
Ooh,
I just want to interrupt this. Look at Jay Leno's face.
the fuck?
Oh my God. Why does he have an eye patch? Why?
Yo ho, matey. Did
Yeah, the
Conan O'Brien beat his ass?
mask. Conan pushed him down some stairs.
I hope he did.
Turned around and all I saw in the shadows was his red hair just
He's going
fading
to
away.
host the Oscars coming up.
I'm excited for that.
Happened? He fought Jay Leno for the part.
Yeah. Unless Jay Leno steals it from him, which could always happen.
Yeah.
He's been known to do that. But now we will move into our final film of this episode. Um, and I had to beat an old lady with a stick to get this movie to play. But
You have issues with it on Disney Plus or
no, that was just a joke
yeah.
because that's what Tobey Maguire had to do to get those cranberries.
Yeah.
Um, Spider-Man. Uh,
Woo!
of
Iron Man.
of course, the hit 2002 superhero film starring Tugboat himself,
Starring
Mr.
the sexiest man alive, Willem Dafoe.
Hmm.
Oh yes, of course. Yes, we are going to get that campaign started
Oh,
on
how much he sacrificed?
you can hear a clip from this film in our intro. It's the very first clip that you hear, because he did sacrifice a lot before going back to formula. He's something of a scientist
For all
himself,
of
trying to get
us.
all the memes in. What'd you say, Sam?
He sacrificed a lot for us having to work with James Franco.
Yes, he did. But yeah, so I'll let you take it away, Mr. Patterson.
Righty. Well, everyone should know the plot of Spider-Man, but if I I will still go
He's
through
he's
it.
the one who turns green when he gets mad, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He also has blades come out of his hands and regenerates when he
Okay.
gets.
Or wait, no, he's the one with the shield, right? I
Yeah,
thought
yeah, yeah. The huh?
I thought he had a hammer.
Oh, maybe
Hmm.
he is the one with the hammer. Yeah, I
The
can't.
hammer, no, the hammer and the shield actually in that one movie.
Oh, I see. I
You're
see.
right. You're right.
Is he the one that hangs out with the talking raccoon?
Okay, well, anyways, so uh, basically, Cliff Notes, Peter Parker's a nerdy kid in love with his next door neighbor, Mary Jane Watson. Can't really get her. Gets really lucky and gets bit by a radioactive spider. Becomes super handsome, doesn't need glasses anymore, is totally ripped, and shoots webs out of his hands. Which they definitely made the masturbation joke in one scene very subtly. I'm exercising and I don't have any clothes on. Just webs floating around his room, and I'm just like, God damn it. Uh,
He
but yeah,
also, it should also be said he yeah, he does all those things and he also, works for a newspaper. He beats
all
up
right.
Macho Man Randy Savage.
Yep.
Depending on which generation, this is either J.K. Simmons' most iconic role or Whiplash's, but I feel like this truly is
Oh yes.
Yeah.
his role.
Absolutely.
If he didn't get the Whiplash role, people would be looking back like, why didn't he do anything else?
Why hasn't he won an Oscar yet? Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what they
He
would
just
say.
takes up the screen when he is on when he is on there.
Hmm.
But yeah, basically, and his best friend is James Franco, Harry Osborn, who his dad,
Earl.
huh? His dad is Norman Osborn, the owner of Oscorp, which is a military weapons company. It's like doing chemical stuff. And of course, he tests the superhuman chemical on himself way too early, thus becoming the Green Goblin. And as the movie goes out, what's his name? Peter Parker is trying to figure out how to be Spider-Man. And then there's also the Green Goblin just terrorizing people. And then there's this little, they figure each other out on Thanksgiving, is when he kind of figures out what's going on.
Yeah, because Peter gets his first period. He
Yep.
sniffs blood.
I love it. I love the scene where she smacks his hand, or smacks his hand, and he just stares at her like,
His
And
fingers.
he does the thing with the knife.
"Yep." He's like, "I'm gonna kill you."
That's his revenge later when he busts through her wall. That's his revenge for that.
I'll best believe he busted through that wall.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Oh yeah.
Bustin makes him feel good.
But I hadn't really watched the first one in a minute, I think I watched it like back in like 2019, but I didn't really pay attention to it. But I paid my full attention to this one, and damn, was it? I forgot how like well lit it was, well shot it is. Um, I just enjoyed it a lot. I think there are scenes that are just classic that are still, you know, parodied and talked about that you just kind of forget that came from the first one. And then of course, like the Macho Man Randy Savage scene is great with Bruce Campbell and Octavia Spencer out of nowhere with the cameo. Um, yeah, I really loved rewatching this. I had a great time with it. It definitely made me appreciate it more. I haven't watched Spider-Man 2 or 3 yet, but we're gonna get there. But what did you guys think rewatching this one?
Um, yeah, I think I kind of cheated with how I saw this one because I watched it about a month or two ago and didn't see it yesterday.
Uh,
Because I was like I literally like just saw it that not that long ago, so I was like it's fresh enough in my head. And I was kind of running behind, so but yeah, again, just like Son of a Woman, this was extremely not my first time watching this big childhood classic. I've seen it 1,000 times, just like the other two in the trilogy. But yeah, it's this one is honestly really, really good. This one is like just man, I this year has been kind of a fun year for me in the sense that I've been really getting back in touch with all these old school superhero movies because before Deadpool and Wolverine came out, I rewatched all the X-Men movies and I rewatched the Fantastic Four movies and Daredevil, and then I saw this and it's like, okay, yeah, I've been watching all these older 2000 superhero movies and man, I just miss that era. You know what I'm saying? Like a lot of people, it's usually older people, like say, oh yeah, that era was bad, like the MCU is when superhero movies finally got. I'm like, man, that's a garbage take. Like were all of the 2000 superhero movies great? Maybe not, but man, I just missed that era. Like there were a lot of good ones, and these in particular, obviously, the Spider-Man movies were the gold standard for the time.
Well, that's one thing that I found interesting because I've always known she wears that dress at that like Times Square party that's very culturally appropriation. But I looked at the advertisements that were going on like the Times Square area, and they were all like Asian whiskey and other like places, and then it cuts right back to her, and there's this giant communist sign right behind her, and I was like, they're really trying to say something with this, having the people come in and attack via planes and everything that's going on is really seems intentional, which I've never noticed.
I can't say I noticed that either.
yeah.
Really quick, there's just like two or three of the signs behind everything that's going on while they're talking are all just products from Asia. So that's what I was like, what? And then that giant, it's literally huge. It's the communist poster, like flag.
They must have had some kind of sponsorship deals. Who the hell knows? They're like, okay, you can use our product, but she has to wear this dress or
Yeah,
something.
we got to sell this in this country. So
Something. Who
support
the
them.
hell knows? But
God damn, Defoe had that thick booty in that scene when he's hovering over him, trying to.
I love how you can see his like eyes and mouth under the mask move a little bit as well. Like, it's still intimidating as fuck, but like, instead of just having it all covered up, kind
yeah, I
of.
love the parts where he's got the eyelids up and you can see his eyes. And one thing I love about No Way Home is you finally get to see the expressions he's making under the mask all that time. Where you see how fucking crazy his face looks in that movie, and you're like, so this is what he looked like under that mask all that time. They almost didn't even need the mask. He looks so scary on his own, but so now whenever I watch this one, I'm like, I know what he looks like under there now. I know the expressions he's making.
I
But
know, like he was
God, sorry.
stabbed, like in the lower abdomen, but I didn't realize how much like that shit fucking pierced his dick, and that must have fucking hurt.
Yep. Um, what was I gonna say? Oh yeah, so I watched this on Disney Plus, and I swear to God, they fucking smoothed his face for some reason. I don't know why, but his face just looked wrong. Like not like in a sense of like it just looked like too smooth. And I don't know why. If like I have my Spider-Man gift set, and I'm gonna put it in the DVD later and confirm. But I swear to God, his face was like way too smoothed out in some scenes, and I'm like,
I think it's possible, just maybe.
well, because it's
Willem
on Disney
Dafoe's
Plus.
face is just that smooth and perfect.
I don't
Because
remember it being all
Oh,
that like
maybe it's
flat. It just looked flat.
he's
I
just
was
a
like,
gorgeous man with gorgeous skin.
such a long chin too.
yeah,
But I love the connections we're making
on
here
the big teeth.
because this movie has something in common with both of the other two, other than the Thanksgiving thing.
It's New York City.
Because in Pieces of April, they're talking about the cranberry sauce, and he had to beat an old lady with a stick to get those cranberries. And they're talking about his skin in Scent of a Woman and how smooth it is. The History of My Skin by Charles Sims. And here we're talking about Willem Dafoe's skin being smooth. So all kinds of connections going on here.
Yeah, they're
Um,
all in New York City too.
very true.
Yeah, wow.
Very true. And
Big,
they're all, well, no, Son of a Woman's not in the 2000s, but this came out a year before Pieces of April, so
Hmm.
another connection.
yeah. And I
But
love the ending fight scene. I just want to say it like it felt like almost like an anime fight scene, but like somehow they did that in like like the early 2000s. It's like damn. But when he's just throwing through the wall or like he's just punching him and the camera's just swinging with the punches and stuff like that. I was like, hell yeah.
What the fuck do you mean I was like a father to you, you piece of shit? You were a horrible person every time he was in the same vicinity. So,
Yeah.
yeah, but he, what I do love about this movie truly is, again, like this movie, I remember like, when No Way Home came out, I rewatched all of the Maguire and Garfield movies, none of which I had seen in years. It had been a really, particularly the Raimi movies, because I only saw The Amazing Spider-Man once. I saw it in the theater, never saw it again until I rewatched it for No Way Home. And the Raimi movies I hadn't seen in at least a decade at that point. It had been a really long time. And so it was really cool rewatching them all again. And this one in particular, man, I was watching this one and being like, God, this movie is fucking prehistoric by today's standards. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but it's just like you're so conditioned now to be used to the formula that the modern day superhero movies follow. You watch this and you're like, God bless. This is like, I mean, the equivalent of like watching a fucking, Charlie Chaplin movie or something. It's just like prehistoric by today's standards. But, I miss it. I miss this era when you didn't have to follow that formula because the pacing of this movie is so different and they treat it like it's written like we don't have to follow a formula. Like it's a movie and it's going to follow the same conventions as any kind of like drama movie would, same pacing, same everything. Because I remember watching it and being like, yeah, if this were made today, if this were an MCU movie, this scene would happen here. This scene wouldn't happen until this point. This would be longer. This would be this. And I just miss when they didn't have to do
it
that.
wouldn't even get the like. There are times where it's just a movie about him. It's not like the superhero aspect doesn't need to be there, and I think that that's what also brings a lot of life into the
Which I
movie.
love. All three of these movies, I love that aspect because that's the essence of Spider-Man is yes, the superhero stuff is important, but just as important is his personal life and like all that shit that's going down, And these movies to me are the gold standard for how to portray Spider-Man. Like, because especially the second one, but this one, I love again, every time I watch this movie, that last scene with him and Uncle Ben in the car is just fucking devastating to watch. I mean, just that line of "I know I'm not your father." Well, stop pretending to be like that. Oh, just shatters you every single time.
Then yeah,
But
it
I
comes
love
back.
that.
I had a father. His name was Ben Parker.
Yes, great line.
The one thing I thought was hilarious though is right after he does the whole, not my problem scene where he lets the guy go, they do a fade, and the fade is to like just him going downstairs. It's like fade to him on the side of the street. I'm just like, Do we need to fate? I don't know. It's not that we needed to. Usually fates are like, much later, and it's like 2 minutes later. It reaps the consequences by seeing Uncle Ben dead. You know.
Um, but I just miss it because again, like I remember watching the scene where Norman becomes the Green Goblin and thinking to myself, God, this if this were a movie today, this scene wouldn't happen until so much later in the movie, or like, just pacing wise, like that happens. And like it's not right away that he starts like doing crazy shit. They take their time and pace it out. And it's not until a significant amount of time later when he does his first attack. And it's just like this would happen so much faster today. They weren't afraid to take their time with this movie. They weren't afraid to, and they weren't afraid to make it shorter. I don't remember how long this movie is, but it's not 2.5 hours. Like superhero movies back then could be 2 hours or less. And
I was gonna say to your point, I think I don't know, I was watching and I noticed that when Peter finally starts figuring out he's got powers is like right around when Norman gets his. They get kind of have their similar journeys where they get their powers
right,
near the same time.
right.
I like,
And
notice that a lot. Yeah.
I also just miss, obviously there are stakes in this movie, but something I also miss about these 2000 superhero movies is it didn't have to be like world or universe ending stakes every fucking time.
Just a
Like I
group
feel
of
like
people.
these days,
No.
say what?
It's like Mary Jane and then that group of people in the thing. That's it. It's literally just those two that he's really got to save at the end of the movie.
It looks like Mr. Parker has joined us.
I did not, and I repeat, I did not sexually harass Mary Jane.
Jesus. Do you or do you not deny kissing her upside down on the street?
I deny it full-heartedly until the very end at Harry Osborn's funeral, where he deserved to have me kiss his son's boo.
I feel left out now. I'm the only one without a Spider-Man mask.
I'm sorry. We got to come there and
Yeah,
wrap
yeah,
it up.
you got
Here,
to put
here,
a
here,
letter
here.
in
I'll
the
take my
front for
glasses off.
all three
I'm
Spider-Man.
Peter Parker now.
Hell yeah.
Hey guys.
I don't know how to point to y'all like the
Um, that was very well timed. I love that. But yeah, Matt, don't even take yours off. But
the rest.
but yeah, I do think that again, it's very refreshing not having it be universe-ending stakes every single time back in this era because
Well, the universe was
nowadays,
about to end anyway with 9/11, so they really couldn't
yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, do you guys know about the deleted
hmm
trailer?
Yeah, I've seen it.
That's
Yeah.
so funny.
Yeah, it's wild that that happened. And there was, I think on the poster, you could see the Twin Towers in his eyes, and they had to edit that out. But yeah, but again, like the biggest example I always use is Shang-Chi for like the movie that just for no reason whatsoever, just because they feel like they have to. Like the first two-thirds of the movie, it's a martial arts movie, like plain and simple. And then the last third, absolutely out of nowhere, even though it hasn't been mentioned one time, they're all of a sudden like, oh yeah, there's this giant Cthulhu monster behind this wall, and if it gets out, then the universe will be destroyed. I'm like, what the fuck? You haven't mentioned that once the whole movie? What? This is the thing now that's the threat? Like, and it's because they're like, well, it has to be universe-ending stakes every single fucking movie, or else it doesn't really matter. I feel like it has consequences. And I just miss this time when it's just like this grounded personal story. And they're doing it again now. Like the rumors is that the new Spider-Man movie, it's going to be the multiverse again. And like Venom's going to be in it and shit. Even though everyone on the planet just wants it to be him, like in New York with Daredevil fighting the Kingpin and just being a street level neighborhood Spider-Man. And that's what I love about all three of these movies is like, even though there are stakes in all three movies and the villains are going to cause a lot of destruction it's not like universe threatening. It's just the Green Goblin is terrorizing New York and Spider-Man's got to stop him. And at the center of it is this like really personal story of this kid learning responsibility, how to balance his powers with his responsibility, and balance just his personal life and his superhero life and all that shit. And you know, I just I wish they would kind of almost go back to doing shit like this in a way, because every time I watch, and this one in particular, I really like because again, they execute so many of the Spider-Man classic Spider-Man traits very well. He's not a perfect person. He's flawed, as we see when he lets the robber get away, you know, when he's talking with Uncle Ben, when there are plenty of moments where he's not perfect, but he's an autonomous, like independent character who really just he just feels like a real dude who's trying his best. And that's what Spider-Man is. He's not always perfect, but he's just a good dude who's trying his best. And he's got a lot of heart, a lot of personality. And again, that part at the end, that's still such a great emotionally impactful moment when he tells Mary Jane like he can't be with her. It's what he wants the whole movie. It's what he's wanted his whole life. But he realizes like, shit, I can't endanger her that way. You know, like I've realized that now. For the first time, she actually wants to be with him, and he's like, sorry, it's for your own good. I can't really I again, that's him learning the lesson of just like, you know, I gotta be
I
responsible, do the responsible thing here.
really like because even though like he's in high school to a or not really high school, is it
But
college?
yeah, he's in high school for the beginning of the movie.
Senior year.
Like the fact that which is different from the other Andrew Garfield, Tom Holland is like that's a mature decision that I don't think Tom Holland's Spider-Man would make
Well, and here's
because
the thing, like I what I love because Spider-Man to me, again, the entire point of the character is just because he's a teenager doesn't mean he's a stupid kid. Like the whole point behind the character was teenagers can also be superheroes. Teenagers can also be thoughtful, mature individuals who can save people and make good decisions and shit. That was always the point. You know, when Stan Lee created Spider-Man, the idiot editor at Marvel told him it was a bad idea to make a teenager a superhero because they could only be sidekicks because teenagers aren't superheroes. And he said, "Well, fuck you. This one's going to be." So that's that is my number one thing I have always hated about the Tom Holland movies is they treat him like a fucking child, and it drives me up the fucking wall. Like he's not an autonomous individual. They treat him like a fucking sidekick. They treat him like a baby. And his entire No Way Home is the only movie that he has been in to date where he was treated like a three-dimensional character with his own issues and his own sense of identity. Every single movie before that he had ever been in, whether it was his or the Avengers movies or whatever it was, his entire identity revolved around trying to please Tony Stark and the Avengers. And that was it. That was his one character trait. And they always treated him like a child. It drives me up the motherfucking wall in Spider-Man Homecoming. Every single time I watch that scene of him being like, the adults are talking, give me the suit back. I'm like, oh, go fuck yourself. Like, that's not Spider-Man. Like, Spider-Man is not a baby. He is not a sidekick. He's not a child. Like, he doesn't need to be lectured. It's just, I could go on about that for 5 hours, but that's one thing I love about these movies is, you know, they don't treat him that way. He's like, when he's a teenager, when he's in high school, and in the later movies, when he is kind of more of a young adult, like, regardless of what stage he's in or where he's at, again, he's not perfect. He does make bad decisions in all three movies, but he learns from them. He's still trying his best, and he's like, you know, an independent three-dimensional character who you really root for and sympathize with and like, you know, and I think that it's one of the greatest strengths of each of these movies, you know, like and yeah. I also think it's funny how I think about this sometimes. The trajectory of this trilogy follows the same trajectory as the first three X-Men movies, like as far as people are concerned, like where everyone's like, first one's good, second one's great, nobody likes the third one. It's kind of funny, but in both cases, I like the third one in both of those series. But yeah, this one is honestly really solid. I mean, really solid. Like it carved the path forward. We would not be where we are today if not for this movie. This was one of the ones that really set the standard. I mean, truly.
Yeah. And it's just crazy because Sam Raimi came from like just horror movies, and then just hopped into this and was like, yeah, I can do this too. Like I mean, there's obviously the Sam Raimi isms in the movie, but it doesn't take over the movie. It just helps the movie be better.
Yeah, he doesn't let his style overtake the film. I mean, like you said, there's like that quick flash of the skull for no reason. It's like very Sam Raimi-ish. And lots of, his classic isms are all throughout it, including the Bruce Campbell scene, but which is amazing. Every cameo he has in these is great. But yeah, the whole thing is just so, and this had to have been without question the biggest budgeted movie he had done at this point, because he had not just done horror but mostly independent movies, like Simple Plan and Quick of the Dead, like movies with not huge budgets. So for him to take that leap into such a big budget film where the stakes were so high, and be able to pull it off with such grace, um I really think, and again, I also really think that, like, this to me is one of those things where really you're so conditioned now by the modern movies to, it's jarring almost when you watch this. But I think people need to go back and see this movie and this trilogy and a lot of the movies, the better movies from this era, and learn from them. And maybe this era we're in right now, where most superhero movies in the last few years, Marvel movies anyway, have sucked ass, could be fixed, because you go back to this era and it's like there was heart, there was craftsmanship, there was, like, unlike something like the Richard Donner Superman movie, which is just the most dated thing you'll ever see in your life, has not aged well in the slightest. This is more just like, no, this still holds up. This isn't dated at all. You're just not used to seeing this kind of thing anymore. So it feels, old. It feels old just because the filmmaking is so different from the 10,000 things that are released a year now. But this era, obviously, it's the era we all grew up in. I have a soft spot for it, because this was my childhood, was these movies and just the movies from this time. And I really, especially after revisiting so many of them this year, I have such a fondness for it. Where, and to this day, Tobey Maguire's the definitive Spider-Man. Anyone who says otherwise can get these hands right here. And Kirsten Dunst was, of course, I know she got shit back in the day for these movies, but she's very good as Mary Jane. The whole cast is outstanding.
I can't take Matt serious with that mask on.
Yes, Mr. Parker. Do you have something to say?
Fuck my apps. Green Goblin can suck a dick. Norman Osborn, more like Norman sucks Cax Osborn.
Osborne Cox, like from Burn After Reading.
One
But
thing I will say though is I really like the matte paintings they used for like Oscorp and shit. Like the huge, like just making it look huge and shit. I think they did it for that, and it seemed like for the bridge scene for like one wide shot, it seemed kind of like a matte painting. I was like, hell yeah.
yeah, which again, I love that they were willing to do shit like that at this time. That wouldn't happen today. It all looked like CGI. But, and like, I also bringing up the fight scene at the end, yeah, like you said, is really well done. I think the whole climax there is very, I love the part where all the citizens like join in and throw shit at him from the bridge. That was really cool. But yeah, just very heartfelt movie. All three of these movies to me are still the definitive movie version of Spider-Man and always will be. And yeah, it's, I'm sure at the time they saw it as a risk doing this movie, but it paid off. And we wouldn't be where we are today without them. And like you said about Son of a Woman, Sam, all three of these movies, I think New York is such a definitive part of it. Like but they don't get, like you said, too lost in the shots. It's just the character still feels like a living, breathing character in the movie in and of itself. I think. All three of these movies have that going for them. So
And honestly, with each of them, it kind of gets wider because Pieces of April is like contained within that apartment, other than a couple shots, and then Scent of a Woman, they go places, and that's kind of their exposure. And then this is like the biggest scale it has out of all three.
yeah. I also love something I always wondered about a lot of these movies, like especially movies from this time, because a lot of them, like these and the Fantastic Four movies, they're set in New York for pretty much the entire thing. And I always wonder, like, what does everyone in the rest of the country and the world think of this? Like in these movies in particular, it's like you see New York's reaction, like they're used to Spider-Man. But it's like, what does someone from like Iowa think about this? Do they hear about like what's going on in New York with the spider guy? Like, does it get around? You know what I mean? They never really show the consequences outside of New York City. And that's something I always think about is just like, what does the rest of the world think? Do they even hear about this? Do they hear about this in the news? But
You're right.
oh, just a funny question to think about.
You get
But
copycats within each state.
oh yeah, just like we saw in The Dark Knight.
Exactly.
But yeah, so that I guess is another edition of Three for Three. Um, all you motherfuckers out there, be sure to give thanks and eat some fucking cranberry sauce, not out of the can, because
And
nobody fucking does that, according to Isaiah Whitlock Jr.
when in doubt, if you have any doubt this Thanksgiving, fuck.
Oh, you
Serenade us with a Thanksgiving tune, Sam.
Tell us about the pilgrims
Damn, I can't hear it.
and the natives.
There we go.
hear that?
Yeah.
I want to hang it from my mouth and let it drop on its own, but you have to really fucking pull this one.
That is so bizarre how we can't hear it unless you put it right up in front of the camera. But yeah, this has been it for this Thanksgiving edition of Three for Three. And stay tuned. Next week we have our 9 special coming. And
Fine.
that'll be a fun
Gotta
one
keep
for
putting
sure.
special in the title.
So what?
So you got to keep putting special in the title.
Yeah, exactly. That's what got us the views on the Halloween one. So we got to keep doing specials in order to get the people to watch. But yeah, all you motherfuckers out there, keep watching movies, keep giving thanks, keep going back to formula and
Go see Nora.
go see what?
Nora.
Oh yeah.
Saw that this weekend. It was great.
So I hear. I'd
If
like to
you
see
live
it at
in an
some point.
apartment complex, go be friends with your neighbors. They could be weirdos, but they could also provide support.
Don't be friends with Sean Hayes though.
Yeah.
John Hayes. But if
That's a bad idea.
but the people that live in your apartment are Russian and one of them is blonde and brings you cookies, then be friends with them.
Exactly.
It's a free country. It's not rent-free country, as they say.